Hello, 5th and 6th grade. This is your video for Tuesday, September 22nd, and we have the new part of the Sumerian civilization that you're going to be reading today and talking about society, social classes, and how things worked in that culture during that time. And so you're going to be reading pages 27 through 29, and you're going to be looking through several things. I was working with somebody today and trying to give them an idea of how to take notes. And one of the things that, for instance, I'll use as an example because this person was hopefully able to, it might take a little bit of work at times to do this type of thing because you really have to have an understanding of what you're reading. And if you don't understand what you're reading, sometimes reading it over might help give you a better understanding. Sometimes it's just the fact of the vocabulary that's being used, so looking up certain words might give you then an understanding of what you're reading. But go back to page number 24, if you would, and looking at page 24, you find the agriculture and planting with what you're doing there. And so if you look at that, you have the first thing that you notice that one of the notes you can take is on silt and what silt is. And toward the bottom there you have the definition of it, and that's perfectly fine. But basically, if you wrote everything down there, it's sediment of very fine particles containing rock and mineral that is found at the bottom of bodies of water. That's a lot to read. And so when you're doing your quizzes and tests, to actually find all that information or have to read through all that information is going to take up more time than what you might have. Now, maybe you know the information already, and so it wouldn't matter, but more than what you might have as far as the being able to read through all of your notes to be able to answer the questions. And so I have a suggestion, and that is, as you're going through and doing your notes, is to shorten them up a little bit and to summarize what you're actually reading. And Mrs. Jones actually gave me another suggestion later on. I'll show you what I have on the board. If you look at the farming thing, which is the second paragraph there, and the third paragraph, and actually 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs all together. And so I'm going to show you the board. I'm going to move the projector. And so you see there on the wall where it has farmers there toward the bottom. And so let's see if I can, right there. So you see where it says farmers, and it says first to use a wooden plow. First to, the second one, first to connect to an oxen with yoke, and then the first to use a wheel, and then they grew wheat and the different things I was going to write there in addition to that. And then also that there's something else you can add. But you see how I have it all categorized under farmers. So here's your main, back it up. Okay, here's your main subject. These are the subpoints under that. They all fall under farmers. So when you have a question, it's about farming, all you have to do is go to that section that you created in your notes. And through that section that you created, you can look really quickly through 4 different notes here, but 5 if you added another one. You can do that, and that's one way to really help yourself. Now, you have to be able to summarize, because that first note that says, first to use a wooden plow. Well, here's what the whole thing says. Early Sumerian farmers used sticks to poke holes in the ground. Then the farmers dropped seeds into each hole. This was hard, slow work, so Sumerians developed plows as a better way of preparing the soil for planting. Early plows were pieces of wood that made long, shallow trenches in the soil. It was much easier for farmers to drop seeds into a trench than into individual holes. The plow also loosened the soil so the roots of the crops could grow more easily. And so you see there, they give you a whole mess of information here. Not that it's not good information, it is. However, what you have to be able to do is understand in your mind the basics of what that is saying. And that is, number 1, plows were made of wood. Okay, that you can, and you can see in that note that I have, first to use wooden plow, and so I have that. All right, now one thing I would have added on that note, which I didn't, but first use wooden plow for planting seeds. You could even add that. That's still very short, succinct. It's very direct to the point. It's very easy to read and understand completely what it is of that reading that you have there. And they're not going to, on these questions, they're going to be questions that are about general information. They aren't going to be detailed to the point where you are having to write down so much information that you have no way that you can keep up with it. And so you need to be able to understand it to the point where you can put it down into a short sentence or a short phrase. And so that's my suggestion for you. So when you go to this news section that we're reading today, this news section has to do with social class society, has to do with different types of society. You have fishermen and merchants and traders. And then you also have, on the next page, you're going to have the artisans and the buyers. You're going to have the different levels and where they were in society. And so reading through all of that, it gives you some bolded words that are there. And then it also gives you a good bit of understanding of the society itself, how it worked, and how things really were done, how the culture ran, how people thought. Now, on page 23, which is one of your assignments today, number 1 is B, 2 is F, 3 is E, and 4 is D, and 5 is G, and 6 is C, and 7 is A. The archaeologists uncovered artifacts from Ur and land of Sumer and Leonard Woolley. Number 9 is experts in history, archaeology, architecture, translation, photography, and drawing are needed. So all those are needed for an archaeological dig. Number 10, the advances in farming, how they made our farmers work easier. Basically, you have that on the board there. They had those 3 things that they did. They used a wheel, they had the oxen, and they developed a plow. How did Sumer develop from farming settlements to city-states and with a more centralized government? With the use of a plow and irrigation, farmers produced a surplus of food. Some people could work at specialized jobs rather than farming. People used skills that helped you create and maintain the civilization. Some farm settlements grew into villages, and villages grew into cities. Each Sumerian city grew into a city-state with its own government and laws. And then on number 12 there, it says trade between city-states helped them grow in wealth, and that's an important part there to understand. Then on number 13, it says answers for the example of how archaeology supports the Old Testament. It could be records from Sumerian tablets show that camels were beasts of burden in Abraham's time. Archaeologists found many skeletons in caves around Ur, which would indicate that's the way that, if you remember how Abraham buried Sarah and how he was buried. So that would explain also the biblical phrase of gather to his people. And so that would have been one thing. On number 14, all 3 should be filled in. Number 15, the first 2. Number 16, the first and the last. Number 17, the second and the third. Number 18, all 3. And number 19, all 3 should be filled in. And so we, as people learning from the parts that we're talking about as far as the civilization, and we can compare how people lived back then and actually probably find some civilizations that are somewhat similar today. Our society in our world is much more advanced technologically, but as far as culturally, things really are not much different than what it was like back then. In fact, really in the United States, it's much different. In Europe, actually, in developed Europe, once they had the revolution, not the revolution, it is a revolution, but I can't remember what it's called now. But basically, when they started inventing factories and they started doing things on producing things for people through factories, that revolution, once that happened, things changed for people, and it took a while even for them to change then. It's only really been since the mid-1900s when we have what we really determine today to be a middle class. We've always had a middle class, but as far as the number of people that and the number of things that people were able to afford now, it's much different than back then. Well, I hope that that is helpful for you. It should be, and we'll see you in school tomorrow. Remember, these pages that you have today are not due until Thursday, so you have plenty of time to get working on them. All right, have a good day. See you tomorrow. Bye.